I was trying to save her father's life while she whispered another man's name in her sleep. After the funeral, she told me, "I'm not in love with you anymore." I was sleeping on a plastic chair at the hospital, holding her father's hand through his chemo shakes, when I heard my wife whisper another man's name in her sleep. Not her dad's. Not mine. Another man. And that was the exact moment everything shifted inside me. All right, I never thought I'd be writing this out for strangers, but it's been months now and I still can't shake it. So maybe getting it all out will help. Or maybe someone out there needs to hear this kind of story before they burn themselves out for someone who's already left in their heart. I'll start with this. I love my wife. Fully. Completely. If I was the anchor, she was the sail. We balanced each other. Or at least I thought we did. We were married 5 years when her dad got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The kind of thing that just punches you in the gut one random Tuesday morning and takes over your life. Her dad, Bill, was always decent to me. A little distant, classic old school guy, but respectful. And when he got sick, I didn't even hesitate. I offered to move him into our home, but he wanted to stay near his old house and his VA hospital. So I started commuting, hour and a half each way, almost daily. Why? Because she needed me. And because that's what you do, right? You show up. Even when it's hard. Even when no one asks you to. Especially then. The first few weeks were brutal. He was in and out of the hospital. I'd work my job during the day, then drive down, pick up meds, sit with him, hold his water cup when his hands shook too much. My wife. She was struggling emotionally. A lot of crying. A lot of staying in bed. She said the grief was eating her up already. So I told her, "Let me carry this. You take care of yourself. I've got him." And I did. I kept every doctor's number in my phone. Learned how to clean up when he couldn't make it to the bathroom. Memorized his med schedule. Kept a journal of his pain levels. He'd grab my arm sometimes, shaking, and just whisper, "Thank you, son." That stuck with me. But then, there was this night. 2 weeks before he passed. I had come home around 2 a.m. from the hospital. Dead tired. Like soul-crushing tired. She was asleep on the couch, curled up with a blanket. The TV was still on, some late-night infomercial about workout equipment. I sat down next to her, just to be near her. I missed her. I hadn't had a full conversation with her in what felt like days. That's when she stirred, mumbled something, and rolled over. And said it. "Tell Nate I'll be there soon." Just like that. Clear as day. Calm voice. Like she was dreaming of him. I didn't even react right away. Just sat there, blinking. Nate? Who the hell was Nate? Maybe it was nothing. A dream. A movie character. Some weird subconscious brain glitch. But deep down I knew. I just knew. Because over the past few weeks, she had been weird. Distant, sure, but also peaceful. Too peaceful for someone losing their father. She smiled at her phone more often. She didn't ask how Bill was doing unless I brought it up. Sometimes I'd be telling her about how rough the day was, and she'd be scrolling Instagram with that vacant look in her eyes. Still, I didn't bring it up. I didn't want to accuse her of something and look paranoid, especially during a time like this. But the name stuck in my head like a splinter. Nate. Who was he? The next day, I went back to the hospital. Pretended everything was normal. Bill was weaker. He couldn't keep food down anymore. I fed him broth with a plastic spoon and wiped his mouth when he drooled. And the whole time, I kept thinking, how could she be so calm while her dad is dying? I thought maybe she was coping in her own way. Everyone grieves differently, right? But then, things started adding up. She stopped asking if I needed help with him. Stopped calling to check in. One night, I came home and found the laundry untouched, the fridge empty, and her gone. No note. No text. She came home hours later, said she'd gone for a drive to clear her head. Her eyes were glassy, but not red. Not the kind of eyes you get from crying. I started watching more closely. Not obsessively, but I couldn't help it. I noticed she'd turn her phone away when I walked by. She started locking it at night. She had never done that before. And then one night at the hospital, I opened her old gym bag looking for socks. She had left it there the last time she visited her dad. Inside was a phone I didn't recognize. One she said she lost months ago. I turned it on. It still worked. And that's when everything changed. There weren't many messages, but there were enough. Text from someone saved as N. But I knew. I knew it was him. The first one I read, "I miss your body next to mine." The second, "Don't let him guilt you into staying." I just stared at that screen, sitting on the edge of her father's hospital bed, while he slept beside me, hooked up to machines. I never felt more hollow in my life. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. And I needed to decide how to walk away without losing myself in the process. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the same chair beside her father's hospital bed, staring at that little cracked phone screen like it was about to explode in my hands. I read every message. They didn't go too far back. Maybe she wiped it once before. Or maybe they were just careful. Either way, what was there? It was enough. Most of the texts were emotional. Not graphic. But to me, that made it worse. It wasn't just sex. It wasn't some one-night mistake she was regretting. This was planned, intimate, developed. There were messages about their future, about how hard things will be for a while. But she knows it's right. One message even said, "He's a good guy. I feel awful, but I can't live a lie forever. He's a good guy." That's what I got out of 5 years of marriage and 6 months of me wiping her father's vomit off my shirt while she played house with some other man behind my back. And the worst part? She hadn't even left me yet. She was still coming home to me every night. Still letting me hold her when she pretended to cry over her father's pain. Still letting me pick up all the slack while she slowly unplugged herself from the life we built. Quietly, softly, like someone tiptoeing out of a house they robbed. But I didn't confront her. I didn't even move the phone. I took pictures of every message, emailed them to myself, and slipped the phone right back into her bag where I found it. I needed to play dumb, at least for a little longer, because if she was already half out the door, I was going to let her walk through it. But on my terms. That next morning, I drove home in silence. I didn't turn on the radio, didn't stop for coffee. I just gripped the wheel and thought. And the weird thing was, I wasn't angry, not in the way you'd expect. I wasn't screaming or punching walls or plotting revenge. I just felt cold, like I'd crossed some invisible threshold, and nothing would ever feel warm again. She was in the kitchen when I got back, scrolling on her phone, drinking from the mug I bought her on our first trip together. It said, "You, me, and coffee forever." I remember that day so clearly. Now I could barely look at it. She asked how her dad was doing. I lied and said he'd had a good night. She said she was thinking of going down to visit him soon. I lied and said he'd probably love that. She smiled and looked so genuine, I almost questioned everything again. Almost. Over the next few days, I kept doing what I always did. I cared for her father. I paid the bills. I picked up groceries. I kept pretending I didn't know a damn thing. And all the while, I was watching her closely. She was lighter. That's the only way I can describe it. Like a woman who had made peace with her decision. She was on autopilot now, already seeing herself in some other future that didn't involve me. The only time I saw real emotion from her anymore was when she was on her phone. She never smiled at me the way she smiled at whatever was on that screen. She'd hold it like it was precious, cradle it in both hands, tuck it under her pillow at night. One evening, about a week before her dad passed, she came to the hospital with me. I think she felt guilty. She spent half the time in the hallway on her phone, pacing, the other half sitting next to her dad, but barely speaking. That night, I watched something shift in him. He looked at her like he didn't recognize her. Like maybe he knew, too. Or maybe he just saw something in her that I hadn't wanted to admit until now. She was already gone. She'd been gone for a while. He squeezed my hand before I left that night. Didn't say much. Just looked at me and said, "You're a better man than me." That was the last thing he ever said to me. He passed away 3 nights later. Peacefully. In his sleep. I was the only one there. I held his hand through it. Stayed with him until the nurses came. I called her and told her. She cried. Said she should have been there. I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything left to say. The funeral was small. Family, a few close friends. She was a mess. Or at least she looked like one. I stood by her side, held her hand when the casket was lowered, kissed her forehead as people came up to offer their condolences. And even then, I felt like a ghost standing next to her. At one point during the reception, she disappeared for a while. Said she needed air. I followed, quietly. Not to spy. Just to confirm what I already knew. She was around the corner of the funeral home, on her phone. She was smiling. That was the only time I felt something close to rage. Not because she was texting him, but because she couldn't even wait until after the damn funeral. That night, when we got home, she curled up in bed next to me and whispered, "Thank you for being so strong through all of this." I didn't answer, because I wasn't being strong for her anymore. I was being strong for me. And from that moment forward, I knew I was leaving her. Quietly, Completely. Without begging. Without shouting. Without giving her the satisfaction of knowing she broke me. I was done. She just didn't know it yet. I didn't leave right away. I wanted to. God, I wanted to just pack a bag and vanish. But something about that felt too simple. Too easy for her. Like I'd just become the bad guy who walked out after her dad died and gave her the clean excuse to cry on someone else's shoulder without guilt. No, that wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to make this any easier for her than she made it for me. So I stayed. Not out of love. Not out of hope. I stayed so I could watch her, understand her, and walk away without leaving any loose ends behind. This was no longer a marriage. It was a slow, quiet transition into freedom. Mine, not hers. The house got quieter after the funeral. No more hospital trips. No more calls from nurses. No more late-night grocery runs for bland soup or oxygen canisters or extra blankets. Just this hollow silence between us that neither of us dared to acknowledge. She didn't talk about her dad much, which, I'll be honest, was strange. She cried when she had to, teared up when people asked how she was. But I could see it wasn't real. Not like I expected it to be. It was like she was acting the part of the grieving daughter, but her heart was already somewhere else. And I think that's what made everything so much worse. It wasn't just that she cheated. It was that she let me carry all that weight of her father's death, of our crumbling home, of everything, while she escaped into some fantasy with a man who didn't even know what I had done for her. Nate didn't hold her father while he vomited blood. Nate didn't take off work and drive 2 hours round trip every damn day. Nate didn't come home smelling like disinfectant and sadness. But Nate, he got her smiles, her giggles, her late-night texts and whispered dreams. I got the grief, and she gave him the grace. It didn't take long before the mask started slipping. She got bolder with her phone, less guarded. She stopped faking closeness, stopped pretending to care about how I was doing. Sometimes I'd walk into the kitchen and she'd go quiet, like she was annoyed I even existed. Then, one night, maybe 2 weeks after the funeral, I caught her smiling at her screen again. That same little smirk she used to give me back when we were new. Back when she actually looked at me like I mattered. She was sitting on the back porch, wine in hand, wearing one of the old shirts I used to sleep in. She didn't even flinch when I sat down beside her. Just turned the phone upside down like that made it invisible. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded. "Yeah, just tired. You've been tired a lot lately." She looked at me, annoyed. What's that supposed to mean? I just shrugged. Nothing. But she knew I knew. And I knew she knew I knew. That's the thing about betrayal. It creates a quiet language. A look. A tension. A knowing. The next morning, I took the day off work. I didn't tell her. She thought I left for the office like usual. I kissed her cheek, said I'd be late. But instead, I drove to a lawyer's office across town. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. But I also wanted protection. I wanted to make sure that when I left, she wouldn't drag me through the mud. That she wouldn't take the house I paid for, or spin some narrative that made me look like the villain. The lawyer was sharp. Kind. She didn't judge. She listened carefully, asked me questions I hadn't even thought to ask myself. She told me something I'll never forget. There's strength in leaving without shouting. But don't mistake silence for weakness. You're allowed to protect yourself. So that's what I started doing. Quietly, carefully, I started moving pieces into place. I checked the title on the house. It was in both our names, but the mortgage was in mine. That was good. The car? Mine too. I opened a new bank account, transferred part of my paycheck into it, set up a new P.O. box, and started forwarding important mail. I took photos of everything in the house. Everything I owned. Everything we shared. Just in case. And I waited. Because she still hadn't told me. She still hadn't confessed. Maybe she thought she didn't need to. Maybe she was hoping I'd be the one to break first, so she could spin the story. Make me the distant husband who didn't emotionally show up. But I wasn't giving her that. I was waiting for her to do it herself. And one night, when the house was dim and quiet, and we were sitting in bed with the TV, playing some old movie neither of us were watching, she turned to me and said, "I think we should talk." I muted the TV, and she said it. "I don't think I'm in love with you anymore." There it was. The line. The quiet dagger. I didn't react. Didn't flinch. I just looked at her and said, "Yeah, I figured." She blinked. That caught her off guard. "You did?" I nodded. "I've known for a while." She swallowed. Looked down at her hands. Then she whispered, "I met someone." I let the silence hang for a moment. Then I asked, Nate? She froze. That silence. It was the closest thing I've ever seen to someone's soul leaving their body. She couldn't even speak. Just stared at me, mouth slightly open, like I had just read her mind. And all I said was, I'm not surprised. Then I got up, went to the kitchen, and made myself a cup of coffee, like it was just another Tuesday. She didn't follow me. She stayed sitting on that bed, probably trying to figure out how long I'd known, how much I'd seen, how much of herself she had exposed without realizing it. And I think that was the moment she realized. She didn't break me. She just set me free. After that night, everything changed. Not in some big dramatic way. There wasn't screaming. No throwing things. No begging. Just this eerie stillness. Like the moment right after a storm ends, when everything's still wet and wrecked, but the wind finally stops. She barely spoke to me the next morning. We moved around the kitchen like co-workers who just got through an awkward meeting. She poured her coffee. I made eggs. We didn't look at each other. Didn't need to. I think she was waiting for me to break. For some emotional outburst. Maybe even a fight. That would have given her something to point to. See? That's why I had to leave. But I didn't give her that. I just moved like a man who was already halfway out the door in his mind. Because I was. That afternoon, I went to the bank and quietly separated our accounts. Took my name off anything I didn't care to fight for. Put a freeze on joint credit cards. Got new cards issued. I wasn't leaving her penniless or stranded, but I was done funding a life that didn't include me in it. Later that week, I called my boss and asked to work remote for a while. I had some unused vacation time, so I took it. The plan was simple. I'd finish prepping everything I needed legally, emotionally, and practically, then walk away without a single thread left hanging. The only time she said anything was a few nights later. She caught me on the patio, laptop open, headphones in, looking at rental listings. She came out in her robe and leaned on the doorframe. You're really leaving? I didn't even look up. Just said, yeah. A long pause. You don't want to talk about it? I took out my earbuds. No. I think everything's already been said. Or done. She looked like she wanted to cry. But I couldn't tell if it was guilt, sadness, or just the shock of not being in control anymore. That's the thing about people who betray. They expect anger. They expect tears. They don't know how to react to peace. She stepped closer. You were such a good husband. I don't know why I cut her off. Calmly. It doesn't matter. I'm not here for apologies or explanations. I'm just here to pack and go. She didn't say anything after that. The next morning, I emailed her a clean proposal. I'd take the car. She'd keep the house. I'd cover the final mortgage payment of the month. After that, she was on her own. No alimony. No debts. No mess. I could have fought harder. I could have asked for half the value of the house, half the savings. But I didn't want a dime that came from her new life. Let her build it with him. If he was such a great guy, he could help her now. 2 days later, I started packing. She sat on the couch most of the day, watching old shows on mute, pretending not to watch me walk back and forth with boxes. Once, I caught her staring. Her eyes looked hollow, like she finally realized I wasn't bluffing. And maybe this sounds cold, but I didn't feel bad for her. I felt bad for myself, my old self. The man who spent months breaking his back for her father, thinking he was protecting a future that no longer existed. That guy deserved better. He didn't get it. But this version of me, the one filling cardboard boxes with folded clothes and paperwork and freedom, he wasn't going to settle anymore. Before I left, I wrote her a letter. Just a short one. I left it on the kitchen table. I didn't say anything cheesy or bitter. Just this. I hope he gives you the things I gave without being asked. I hope you learn what real love costs before it's too late again. I hope you find peace. I already have. And tucked inside the envelope, I slipped a USB drive. On it, all the screenshots of the text from Nate. Not for revenge. Not for leverage. Just proof. In case she ever tried to rewrite the story later and make herself the victim. Let the truth speak for itself. As I walked out the door, she followed me to the porch. Barefoot. Hair messy. Her voice barely a whisper. Do you still love me? I turned, looked her in the eyes, and told her the most honest thing I'd said in months. I loved you more than I loved myself. That was the problem. Then I got in the car and drove away. No dramatic music. No tearful goodbye. Just the sound of tires on gravel and a weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying finally slipping off my shoulders. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. And now? Now it was time to figure out who I was without her. I didn't crash. That's the first thing people expect when they hear a story like this. That I fell apart, drank myself into a hole, slept on a friend's couch, lost my mind for a while. Nope, I didn't burn down. I didn't spiral. I just kept going. Quietly, steadily, like a man walking out of a burning house with nothing but the clothes on his back and a heart finally starting to beat again. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment across town. Nothing fancy, just a clean slate. Mattress on the floor at first, a folding table I used as a desk and dinner table. Most of my stuff stayed with the house. I didn't want it. I didn't want anything that reminded me of us. I didn't even take the photos. Not out of spite. I just didn't want ghosts hanging on my walls. The first week was weird. I kept checking my phone out of habit, like I was waiting for a text from her. Then I'd remember there was nothing left to say. And maybe that's what broke me a little. Not the betrayal, not the cheating, not the lying. Just the emptiness after. That echo in the apartment where there used to be life and noise and shared everything. But you know what started filling that silence? Peace. Not at first, not all at once. But slowly. I started sleeping better. Deeper. Waking up without that tight chest feeling, like I was already failing before the day even began. I cooked for myself. Sat on the floor with a plate in my lap, watching dumb movies or reading whatever I could get my hands on. Nothing fancy, just routines. But they were mine. I hit the gym again. Not out of revenge. Not to get hot and show her what she lost. I just wanted to feel strong. Like myself. Like a man who could carry his own body without it feeling like a burden. Therapy helped too. I found a guy online, someone who actually listened. I told him the whole story, every brutal detail, every doubt, every piece of self-blame I carried in silence for too long. He said something I'll never forget. You didn't lose your wife. You lost an illusion. And you gained the truth. That hit me like a truck. Because deep down, I had known. For months. I just didn't want to face it. I was loyal to the version of her that died long before her father did. She texted a few times. Short, sad little messages. Hope you're okay. I still think about you. Do you hate me? I didn't reply. Not once. I didn't block her either. I wanted her to see that silence. To feel it. Not as a punishment, but as a mirror. To know that there was nothing left to salvage. That her actions didn't just hurt me. They hollowed me out. And I had to rebuild with new material. One day, I was at the grocery store, wearing the same hoodie I wore during one of those endless hospital nights, when a nurse recognized me. She came up, kind face, gentle voice. Said, "You were with Mr. Thompson, right? You were his son-in-law." I nodded, unsure where this was going. She smiled. "You were there every night. I remember. You were always calm. Always kind. You did right by him. Not everyone does that." I don't know why, but I almost teared up. Not because of what she said, but because I needed someone to say it. Because for so long, I felt like everything I gave just disappeared into a void. Like all that effort, all that loyalty, all that love, none of it mattered. But hearing that, from someone who saw it, who remembered, that was the first moment I thought, maybe I'm not the fool here. A few weeks later, I got word through a mutual friend, Nate left her. Apparently, it didn't last long. The reality of her grief, her mess, her instability, it all came crashing down, and he wasn't built for that. He liked the fantasy version of her, the secret version, but the real-life day-to-day of being with someone who just destroyed her marriage? Nah, he was out. She tried calling me after that. I didn't answer, because I wasn't some backup plan. I wasn't a place she could crawl back to when the flames got too hot. She chose the fire. Let her sit in it. That same day, I got a promotion at work. A new client came in, asked to work with me specifically. Said he'd heard I was reliable, unshakable. Funny how people see things in you when you finally stop hiding in the shadows of someone else's dysfunction. That night, I sat on my little balcony with a cheap beer and watched the city lights blink. And I realized I didn't miss her. I missed the version of myself that thought love alone could fix everything. But that guy? He's gone. And the man sitting on this balcony? He's not perfect. But he's real. He's grounded. And for the first time in a long time, he's free. It's funny. You think the final part of a story like this, the after, is going to be this big, dramatic moment. Like you wake up one day with a full beard and a six-pack, sipping whiskey in a leather armchair while your ex calls you sobbing and begging for another chance. That's not what happened. What actually happened was life. Slow, quiet, surprisingly ordinary life. I started going to this little coffee shop a few blocks from my apartment. Nothing fancy. Wooden chairs that creak when you sit, jazz music on low, and a barista who wears a bow tie for no apparent reason. I started sitting by the window, just reading, thinking, sometimes journaling, which felt weird at first, but helped. I stopped checking my phone. It was always on silent now. She still texted occasionally, birthday, holidays, random memory triggers. I never replied. Eventually, she stopped. It was at that coffee shop that I met Sarah. No fireworks. No romantic comedy moment where we both reach for the same muffin or whatever. Just a simple, normal interaction. She was in scrubs, looked exhausted, ordered 2 espressos, and muttered something like, one for each personality. I laughed. She smiled. We talked. Turns out, she was a nurse. Yeah, a nurse. At the same hospital where I'd spent months sleeping in a chair next to her father's bed. She didn't remember me, not right away. But when I told her his name, she paused and said, wait, were you the one who used to bring him the crossword books and stay overnight? I nodded. She just looked at me for a second, then said, we always wondered if you were his son or his son-in-law. You were there more than anyone. Something about that hit me in a place I didn't know was still sore. We didn't jump into anything. I wasn't ready. I told her that up front. She respected it. We just talked. A lot. Walks. Coffee. Movie nights that didn't end in anything more than quiet, comfortable company. And over time, without even realizing it, I started smiling again. Not the fake kind. Not the polite kind you wear to family dinners when everyone asks how you're doing. The real kind. The kind that sneaks up on you when you're not watching. She asked about my marriage once. I didn't lie. I told her the truth. Not in detail, but enough. She asked if I hated my ex. I told her no. She looked surprised. But here's the thing. Hate is heavy. It's exhausting. And if there's one thing I learned, it's that dragging around someone else's mistakes only slows you down. She made her choice. I made mine. And I chose peace. One night, a few months into whatever it was Sarah and I were becoming, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from her. My ex. She didn't say much. Just said she hoped I was okay. That she thought about me often. That she was sorry, not just for what she did, but for how she made me feel invisible while she did it. And then this line, scribbled like she hesitated before writing it. I thought you'd fight for me. I didn't know walking away would hurt more. I sat with that for a long time. Not angry. Not sad. Just still. Because in that moment, I finally realized. I never lost. She thought walking away meant I gave up. But I didn't give up. I chose me. I chose sanity. I chose dignity. I chose silence over screaming. Closure over chaos. And looking back now, it was the best damn choice I ever made. The story doesn't end with revenge. It doesn't end with someone begging or someone groveling or some movie moment where she sees me holding hands with someone prettier and finally regrets it all. It ends like this. A man sitting across from a woman who actually sees him, who listens, who smiles like she means it. A man who learned how to lose everything that wasn't real so he could finally find something that is. And for anyone who's been where I was, let me tell you, you don't have to scream to be strong. You don't have to destroy them to heal. You don't need the last word to move on. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is get up, say nothing, and walk out the door without looking back. And when you do, that silence will be the loudest thing they hear for the rest of their life.